I met him a few years ago in New York. His name was Aaron. He never introduced himself as doctor, but I knew that's what he was. A therapist. Or at least, he used to be one. People like him don't usually just walk away from their careers. Not suddenly. Not without explanation. But Aaron did. One day his practice was there, and the next day it was gone. No goodbye message. No transfer of patients. Nothing. At first, I didn't think much of it. Then I noticed something strange. Aaron never sat with his back to a door. He flinched when someone knocked unexpectedly. And every time his phone buzzed, his eyes darted to the screen like he was afraid of what name might appear. One night, after a long conversation and a few drinks, I finally asked him why he quit. He didn't answer right away. He just stared at his glass, rotating it slowly, like he was trying to decide whether or not to spill something he could never put back. Finally, he said, "I had a patient who shouldn't have existed." That was all it took. Aaron told me this happened on a Tuesday evening in late October. He remembered the exact day because it was the last session he ever conducted. He said the appointment was scheduled for 6 p.m. The name was written neatly on his clipboard. Daniel Mercer. No insurance. No referral. No prior history. Unusual, but not impossible. He told me that, looking back, there was a moment where he almost canceled the session. He couldn't explain why. Just a quiet sense of hesitation. But curiosity won, like it always does in that profession. At exactly 6:01 p.m., there was a knock on his office door. When he opened it, a man stood there who looked ordinary. That's the word he kept using. Not threatening. Not nervous. Not memorable. Just ordinary. The man introduced himself as Daniel and stepped inside. From the moment Daniel sat down, Aaron said something felt wrong, but not in the way people usually imagine. Daniel wasn't aggressive. He wasn't erratic. He wasn't emotional. He was too calm. Too still. Most patients fidget. They cross their legs. They avoid eye contact. They adjust themselves constantly. Daniel didn't move at all. He sat with his hands folded neatly in his lap, his back straight, eyes focused forward, waiting. Aaron began the session the way he always did. Confidentiality. Boundaries. The usual process. Daniel nodded politely. Then Aaron asked the standard opening question. "Why are you here today?" Daniel thought for a moment and said, "I want to talk about things I remember, that I don't think I'm supposed to." That was the first thing that made Aaron uneasy. He asked what kind of memories. Daniel said the first thing he always remembered was a smell. Metal. Bleach. Aaron asked where he associated that smell from. Daniel answered immediately. A basement. Aaron told me he felt his chest tighten slightly at that word, but he pushed it aside. Basements are common. Trauma attaches itself to strange details. But then Daniel added something else. Sound doesn't travel well through concrete, he said. That's why basements are good places for secrets. Aaron stopped writing. He asked Daniel what he meant by that. Daniel said, "People talk a lot at first. Then they talk less. Then they stop." Aaron asked him directly if he had ever hurt someone. Daniel answered without hesitation. Yes. No emotion. No defensiveness. Just a statement. Aaron asked if these were urges, or memories. Daniel corrected him. Memories. That was when Aaron said the room felt colder. Not literally, but like something had shifted. Daniel started mentioning dates. Specific dates. April 12th. June 3rd. August 19th. Aaron asked why those dates mattered. Daniel said, "Those were the nights the news talked about him the most." Aaron felt a wave of recognition hit him before he even understood why. He asked Daniel who him was. Daniel smiled slightly and said, "The man they blamed." That phrase stuck with Aaron. Because suddenly, without trying to, a name surfaced in his mind. A name everyone in America remembered. A case that dominated the news years ago. A serial killer. Multiple states. Victims found in underground locations. Basements. Daniel Mercer. Aaron told me he remembered watching the trial. Sitting in his living room, seeing that man in chains, thinking it was finally over. His voice shook when he asked Daniel the next question. What was his name? Daniel leaned back in his chair and said, "You already know it. You just don't want to say it." Aaron whispered the name before he could stop himself. Daniel Mercer. Daniel smiled. "That's what they used to call me too." Aaron stood up so fast his chair nearly fell over. He told Daniel the session was over. Told him he was calling the police. Daniel didn't panic. He didn't move. He just said, "They said he was executed. Closed casket. Lethal injection." Aaron told him that was impossible. The man executed was in his 40s. The man sitting in front of him was much younger. Daniel nodded. "They never found all the bodies," he said. "And they never found the one who learned from him." Then Daniel glanced at the clipboard on the desk. "Check the time," he said. Aaron looked down. 6:58 p.m. Almost an hour had passed. Daniel stood up calmly. "I just wanted to know if I sounded sane," he said. Aaron didn't respond. He ran. He didn't stop running until he reached the street. The police arrived minutes later. They searched the office, the building, the surrounding area. Daniel was gone. No forced entry. No fingerprints. No security footage. Nothing. Except the visitor log. One name. Written clearly. Daniel Mercer. When detectives ran the name through the system, the record came back instantly. Daniel Mercer. Executed in 2014. Aaron quit 3 days later. He never saw another patient again. When he finished telling me all of this, he sat there in silence for a long time. Then he said something quietly, almost to himself. "I don't know if he was lying, or if I met something that learned how to wear a name. And that's what still bothers me. Because if Daniel Mercer was executed 10 years ago, who was sitting in that chair, talking calmly to a therapist for an entire hour?